going to do two chapters, that is isolation of elements and your general principles with coordination compounds. So let us first start with your general principles and isolation of elements. So before we start the chapter, let me walk you through how you will access the revision notes and the test series in our website. That is, if you go to play6.com and click on practice, we are having different packages available here, but since we are discussing about NEET, let us go to NEET Premium, and at the top you have the revision notes. If you click on revision notes, it opens in a new tab, and here you are having different subjects available, that is for physics, chemistry, biology, and a NEET full test. Each subject you will have chapter wise test, and we can take the test n number of times for the same chapter. Now let us start the chapter with general principles and your. So what do we say it as your general principles, or what are we going to study in general principles? Basically, when we say this is a method of the process of isolation of elements which we will be studying in this chapter. So when we talk about metals, metals basically have a lot of importance in our day-to-day life. Like we are using metals for building around us, the made up of steel, iron, wires, that is going to carry current. It is made up of metals. So there are a lot of application. The bridges, all the towers which we are using, they are all made up of metals. So the most important factor we have to study is what is minerals. Minerals are nothing but the naturally occurring chemical substance in the earth crust obtainable by mining, in the earth crust obtainable by mining, and what we say it as the minerals. And when we talk about your ores, what is ores? Only few minerals are there which is being used as a source of that metal, and those minerals are known as ores. Those minerals are actually known as ores. So when we say the naturally occurring substance which is going to occur in the form of which the metals is going to occur in the earth crust, and the mineral from which the metal is economically, you can say it is being extracted, that is what we call it as a ore. And all the ores are minerals, but we can say that, but all minerals are not ores. We have to have that in mind. And when we talk about the impurities, that is every ore will have certain type or certain form of impurities in it, and impurities associated with the ore, we call it as gangue. And metals are basically existing in two forms. One, it can be in native state, and the other it can be in combined state. So when we do the extraction and isolation of metals from ore, will have different steps, or they are having different process, and those process are the entire specific and technological process which we are going to use for the isolation of the metals from its ore. We call it as metallurgy. We call the term as metallurgy. That is, it is a method for isolation of the metal from its ore. We call the concept as your metallurgy. And when we say we are saying that metals occur in two forms. One, we say it as native state, and the other one we are saying it as combined state. So we should know what is native state and what is combined state. So native state is elements which will have low chemical reactivity, or in simple term, if we try to say, it is noble metals that is having least electropositive character and they are not attacked by oxygen, your moisture, and your carbon dioxide. So basically we could say that these are the elements that is going to occur in free state or in native state. For example, we can take it as your silver, gold, platinum, and your noble gases, and many more. And when we talk about combined state, these are the group of your elements, or you can say highly reactive elements like your fluorine, chlorine, sodium, potassium. They are going to occur in nature in combined form as their compounds, or we are saying it as such as your oxides, your carbonate, sulfide, halide. All these things are existing in our nature. And hydrogen is the only non-metal which is existing in oxidized form. Hydrogen is the only non-metal that is existing in oxidized form. And when we try to learn the method, that is, as I told you, extraction of, or you can say isolation of metals. So we said that there are different methods. If we talk about different methods, we say that first step you will say that it is concentration of the ore. What we do in concentration of the ore, the first step is to remove the impurities from the ore, and it, but that will not involve any chemical process. Just we are trying to remove the impurities from the ore, and it is not involving any chemical process, because it is based on the difference between the physical properties of the metal and the unwanted particles which is present in the metal, and we are trying to remove those metals. So it is just on the concept of the physical properties of the metal as well as the impurities which is being present in that. Hence, in order to do the concentration, or in order to remove that, we are using different methods. One, you call it as hydraulic washing, magnetic separation, froth flotation method, and leaching. So when we say as your hydraulic washing, the process by which your lighter earthy particles are becoming free from the heavier ore particles, and there we are using by washing with water, we say that it is hydraulic washing. And the next method we are using is magnetic separation. This method is also being used for concentration of the ore, and in this we are trying to employ when either the ore or the impurities, they should be magnetic in nature, then only this method of concentration of the ore can be used. It should have the magnetic property. And the next method is your froth flotation. This method is totally based upon the fact that it should be, or it is applicable only on the surface of your sulfide ore, and in this preferably we can say that it is being wetted by oils, while that of your gangue is preferably wetted by water. So froth flotation is a method of concentration of the ore basically for sulfide ores. And the next method is your leaching. Leaching is, this process is going to consist in treating your powdered ore with a suitable reagent which are selectively dissolve the ore but not the impurities. We have to select that particular reagent which will have the tendency of dissolving the. So we were talking about leaching. This process is going to consist in treating the powdered ore with your suitable reagent, and which are selectively dissolve the ore but actually not the impurities. And the second part is our that is isolation of the metal from its concentrated ore. So in order to do the isolation of your metals from its concentrated ore, this process of getting impure metal from its concentrated ore, and this is basically done by some chemical process, and the process which can be involved in order to get impure metal from its concentrated ore is your calcination and roasting. You can use your electrochemical process, or we can use the oxidation reduction method. There are multiple methods which can be used in order to do that. So if suppose we say what is your calcination and the roasting. Roasting is the process of converting an ore into its metal oxide by heating strongly at temperature insufficient to melt in excess of air. That is the concept of roasting. And the next one is your calcination. Calcination is the process of converting an ore into its oxide by heating it strongly before its melting point, and that is done either in absent or you should have very limited supply of air. You should have very limited supply of air. So that is the methods we are using in order to get impure metal from its concentrated ore. And do remember, this is a method which is a chemical process or chemical method. And the next part of it is purification of the metal. We have got the concentrated ore, and next we have to get the pure ore from it. So hence we need to purify the ore. What are all the methods we can use for the purpose of purification of the metal? So when we say purification of the metal, we are using a different terms again. That is, first we can say your method, that is your distillation method, or we can use liquation method. Next, electrolysis, and your zone refining. So when we say distillation, do remember it is a method which is being used, or it is useful for low boiling point metals like zinc and mercury. And the impure metal is evaporated to obtain the pure metal as distillate. The impure metal is evaporated, and you are getting the pure metal as the distillate. And the next method is liquation. Next method, when we say liquation, what does it stand for, or what does it mean? In this method, a low melting metals like your tin can be made to flow on the sloping surface, and in this way it is being separated from higher melting point impurities. So liquation, we are going to talk, if we are trying to use liquation, then there should be a difference between the melting point of the metal and the impurities which is present in it. There should be some difference between the melting point. And the next one we are using for purification is electrolytic refining. In your electrolytic refining, the impure metal is basically made to act as a anode, and a strip of the same metal is being used in pure form as the cathode. And then they are put in a suitable electrolytic bath that is going to contain the soluble salt of the same metal. So we could say the more basic metal remains in the solution, and the less basic metals will get settled on the anode mud. And the other refining method which we are using is called as your zone refining method. In this method, a circular mobile heater is being fixed at one end of the rod, or the impure metal we can say, and as the heater move forward, the pure metal will crystallizes out of the metal, and it will melt, and the impurities will pass on to its adjacent molten zone. So this is the method, or you can say there are certain methods which we are using for refining, or we can say purification of the metals. And there are certain principles which we are using, that is your electrochemical principles of your metallurgy, that is in the reduction of the metals or in the reduction of your molten metal, salt electrolysis is done, and we decide that based on the concept of our delta G value. What is that? We know delta G is equal to minus NFE, and that is based on the concept of that formula we can do the electrolytic reduction of a molten metal salt, and the electrolysis is being done on the concept of our delta G is equal to your minus NFE. So how do we decide based on the value of delta G naught is equal to minus NFE? N is nothing but the number of electrons, and your E dash is nothing but the electrode potential of your redox couple which is formed in the system. So more reactive metals will have large negative value of your electrode potential. That means we should understand that the reduction process is going to be very difficult, and hence if the difference of two E values corresponding to a positive E value, then of course your negative delta G naught. So we could say that less reactive metal will come out of the solution and more reactive metal will go to the solution. So that is the method which we are using. And yes, of course, in the metallurgy of process, we have to, or you will have to learn about different extraction, that is your copper, aluminium, zinc, what are all the, so of course you will go under the same four steps, that is concentration, then conversion, that is getting your impure metal from your concentrated ore, and then we do the refining. Hence it would be important to learn for different metals. And last, when we talk about what is the application, what are all the uses, so there are different metals which we are using in our day-to-day life. That is, for example, you can say aluminium foils, we are using it as a wrappers for chocolates. The fine dust of your metal is being used for paint. Aluminium is being highly reactive, and that is being used in the extraction of chromium. So each, we are having different alloys of aluminium. If we talk about copper, it is being used for making wires, it is used in electrical industry and for water. So each metal has its own importance and has its own application. For example, we can say zinc is used for galvanizing iron, and it is also used in large quantities in batteries. So there are different application for different metals. And based on this, let us try taking a test from this chapter. And once the test is done, we can go to our next chapter, that is coordination compounds. So if you go to chemistry, we are having here chapter wise test, and each chapter has the n number of tests, and the test is based on the weightage of the chapter, and each bubble represents a test. If you look at this, each bubble is a test, and if it is green in color, it indicates that the test is already taken. Blue, it means that the test is yet to be taken, and R, it is for random test, that is we can say that for additional practice. And there is no limit, you can take the same test n number of times. For example, if we take this test, which of the following statement is not correct? Silver fluoride is fairly soluble in water, or silver nitrate is thermally stable substance, silver nitrate. So among the given option, we have to see which option is wrong. So of course, When we look at the given option, silver nitrate gives white precipitate. Silver nitrate gives white precipitate with sodium thiosulfate, which will change its color to yellow, brown, and black due to the formation of silver. But addition of silver nitrate will give a white precipitate of thiosulfate, which will immediately dissolve if the sodium thiosulfate is in excess. Hence, you can say that first your statement heard is not correct. If I say silver nitrate is thermally stable substance, silver nitrate is actually it will decompose when you are heating it. That means your statement 2 is also not correct. And then silver nitrate gives white precipitate with concentrated solution of thiosulfate. With a concentrated solution, actually it will not give you any precipitate. You will get a complex ion when it is reacting with your concentrated solution of your sodium thiosulfate. Hence, only option A is, sorry, 1 is right, 2, 3, 4, it should be incorrect. So, 2, 3, 4 are incorrect. Option B is correct. Let us save that and go to next. Which of the following statement is true? Just now we have discussed liquefaction is a method used for purification of low melting point. Okay. Oxidation is used when the impurities have lesser affinity for oxygen. But oxidation is used when the impurities, in case where the metals will have greater affinity and that will undergo oxidation. It is not having lesser affinity. Second, hydraulic washing is used for concentration of magnetic ores. It is used in case of non-magnetic ores, because if it is magnetic, you will go for magnetic separation. And hence, distillation is used for purification of low boiling volatile metal. This is true and it is being used in case of your low boiling volatile metals. That means we can say your option 1 and 4 is correct, while your 2 and 3 is wrong. So we can go with the option of 1 and 4 being correct, that is our D option. Let us save that and go to next. Given the metal oxide such as Cr2O3, it cannot be reduced using carbon or carbon monoxide. Which of the following must be true? Which of the following must be true? Again, we have to go with your correct statement. So this is because your aluminium is more electropositive than chromium. This is because aluminium is more because here aluminium is used as a reducing agent because it is more electropositive, and the oxides of all your refractory metals are commercially being used by your aluminium. That means only your C option, that is first statement, is correct. So the option C should be right. Hence, whenever they are asking true or false statement, to try to figure out from the given option which could be ignored and which can be considered. So let us save that and go to next. Which of the following is not correct? In an aqueous solution, free copper disproportionates to give copper and copper 2. Copper 2 oxide will give you, copper will reduce I2 to minus 1, I2 to I minus. The reaction is CuI. That is, if you write the reaction, it should be like this. 2Cu2 plus 4I minus will give you 2Cui plus I2. Hence, option, it will oxidize. So, our option D should be correct. This is not correct because they have given here as reduces, but actually it will oxidize, and the question is for not correct. Hence, this is a wrong statement. It will oxidize, it will not reduce. Hence, let us save that and go to next. Copper is an unreactive metal and does not react in normal circumstances with dilute acid. However, it does not react with nitric acid. Which of the following is? So, a simple concept that there are two equations when the reaction of copper is done with your nitric acid. That is, if its concentration is in excess, it is totally going to depend upon the nitric acid, whether it is concentrated or we are taking it as a dilute. So if it is concentrated, the ratio of your copper to nitric acid is 1:4 if you balance the equation. And if we are taking dilute acid, the ratio will be 3:8. So we could say that if copper is reacting with dilute acid, the ratio should be 3:8. So the reaction is actually, when it is reacting with your dilute acid, it will be 3Cu plus 8 HNO3 gives CuNO3 twice plus your 2NO plus 4H2O. That means 3:8 ratio. Check it out in which option it is available. 3:8, it is with option A. Let us save that and go to next. Silver containing lead as impurities is removed by, what is the method of being or removing silver containing lead as their impurities? The process by which we can separate the noble metals such as your gold or silver from base metal is your cupellation, your option B. Let us save that and go to next. The one that is used in automobiles and aeroplanes is, it is a very simple application, that is your nickel steel. Let us save that and go to next. The metal that is sometimes found in nature, native in nature. So it's very simple, it should be your option B, copper. Copper is very slowly attacked by air or moisture and carbon dioxide. Hence, it has the tendency, or sometimes it occurs in native state. Save that and let us go to next. An alloy is formed by mixing. There are different types of alloy, but here if we see, we can say that iron and copper, iron and your carbon, an alloy called cementite is being formed, and the formula is Fe3C. It is actually a hard and brittle material, and of course it is very important in the process of metallurgy. Hence we can say option D to be right. In Goldsmith aluminothermic process, which of the following is used as a reducing agent? Which one is being used as a reducing agent? Always remember, in Goldsmith aluminothermic process, aluminium powder is being used as a reducing agent. Save that and go to next. Among the following, the wrong statement. Among the following, if we see, when you are looking at the option itself, we could guess that option B should be wrong, because argentite and cuprite are not oxides. If you see the formula or the equation, we can say argentite is Ag2S and cuprite is Cu2O. Hence, this cannot be an oxide. Hence, option B is the wrong one. Let us save that and go to next. The blast of hot air is introduced from tires during extraction of iron at above. This is a fact. The initial temperature is needed to start the reaction, and that is actually 1000 Kelvin. So option C should be the right answer. Let us save that and go to next. German silver does not have silver in its but then what is the composition of the German silver if it does not have? German silver, actually it will vary in composition, that is the percentage of three elements ranging approximately. Copper, if you say, it has from 50% to 61.6 percentage. Zinc is 19 to 17, and nickel is 30 to 21.1. So this mixture will actually look like silver. Therefore, it is called as your German silver. Hence, our option should be 50 percentage, 50 and above. All other options, if you see, it is lesser than 50. And the percentage of copper in German silver is 50 to 61.6. Hence, option C should be correct. Let us save that and go to next. The froth stabilizers generally used during froth flotation. What is the one which we are using? Do remember, Quezol and aniline stabilizes the froth before it is taken out for further treatment or further process. Hence, option D is correct. The pulverization of ore is done during when we are doing the process. It's always done, or pulverization is nothing but crushing and your pulverization are the process in the ore, which we say it as pressing is needed to reduce the valuable ore to the fine size at which the valueless gang can be separated from the ore, and this process is used to reduce cement rock to the fine powder which we are requiring for burning. Hence, we can say that crushing and grinding of the ore, we say it as your pulverizing, or pulverization is done during crushing and grinding of the ore. Let us save that, and we have completed all the 15 questions. Let us end the test and see how many questions we have done right and how many are wrong. This is a very simple chapter and it has just 2% of weighted. That means you can say only one question may occur from this chapter. Hence, it is very simple. It's totally theoretical. Hence, it would be very simple to prepare for it. And if you look at this, all the 15 questions are correct. That is why it is indicated green in color. And if you have gone wrong with any question, it would be indicated red. And if we are leaving any question unattempted, it's orange in color. And if you click on the question, it will give you the right answer with a proper explanation of the answer. Hence, if you are gone wrong anywhere, it will become very easy to know the right answer with explanation. So by this, I complete the chapter of your general principles and isolation of elements. We will continue now with the compounds. So coordination compounds. What we say in coordination compounds. So when we are saying about the concept of coordination compounds, this chapter is also not difficult. It's very simple and it will take very less time to study. So coordination compounds are those where we are having addition molecular compound which will retain their identity in solid state as well as in dissolved state. And here when we are talking about your coordination compounds, it would be very simple to say that we are having a compound where we will have coordinate bond, and it is nothing but a bond in which sharing of electrons will occur but not mutual sharing. You will have sharing of electrons but not mutual sharing, and this is a very important compounds in our day-to-day life because many compounds are going to exist as coordination compounds because they are having special type of linkage and that is what we call it as coordinate bond. And it is a bond that is going to exist because of sharing of electrons but not mutual sharing. Hence in this, the shared pair, how do we represent that shared pair? That is represented by, or it is donated by, only one atom and one, of course we know that the one that is donating we call it as a donor, and the other which accepts the electrons we call it as an acceptor. So the branch of chemistry that is going to deal with the study of your coordination compounds, we call it as coordinate chemistry. We are calling it as a coordinate chemistry. For examples, we can say chlorophyll, vitamin B12, your hemoglobin. All these things or all these examples can be considered to be a coordinate compounds. So most of the time, coordination compounds, we confuse it with the double salt. So there should be some difference between the double salts and the coordination compounds. Actually, double salt is the association of many substances, or we can say that they will contain two salts in equimolar concentration. It is a combination, or it is an association of two salt in equimolar concentration. For example, we all know we can consider it as your Morse salt. And in coordination compound, once the compound is being formed, its ion compound as a whole will not lose its identity, but when we try to dissolve in water, they will show different properties. But what happens in double salt? They don't show different properties, and once you try to dissolve it, they will lose their identity in water. They will lose their identity in water. And coordination compounds can exist in solid as well as in aqueous state, but double salt will exist only in solid state. And if we try to make it in aqueous state, they will dissociate into ions. And that coordination compounds will exist in extended octet, whereas in double salt they will exist in their own balances. So there is a difference between your coordination compounds and double salt. Hence we should not confuse between coordination compounds and double salt. So when we study about coordination compounds, there are different terms which we should know, or there are different terminologies which we come across in this chapter. First thing we say, what is central metal atom? What do we mean by your central metal atom? And here we are having a complex ion that is nothing but an extremely, or you can say it is electrically charged species in which central metal atom or ions is being surrounded by number of ions or your neutral molecules. So here the most important part is a central metal atom. If we are saying it is surrounded by the number of ions, or your central metal atom is being surrounded. What is central metal atom? So the central metal atom is nothing but it is the acceptor metal that is being present in your coordination compounds. So basically the acceptor metal, it is mostly the d block elements, and that act as an acceptor because it will have vacant d orbital, and due to accepting nature, they are acting as a Lewis acid. They have the tendency of acting as a Lewis acid. And next important one is we say what is ligands. They are donor atom, and that can be a single atom or it can be a group of atoms. So ligands is electron donating group, that can be ions or molecule. It's different, and hence we say that, and they will have the tendency of being bound to your central metal atom in the coordination entity. And since they are having the tendency of being accepted, or they are donor atom and they are neutrally charged, or they can be a neutral species with lone pair, or neutral like it can be ammonia, carbon monoxide, and they will have the tendency of acting as a Lewis base. And the next one is your coordination sphere. What is coordination sphere? So combination of your atoms and ligands, we say it as a coordination sphere. So if it is positively charged, then we call it as your cationic entity, and if it is, and in case of negative charge, it is called as either anionic entity, or we say it as anionic complex. It's a, and there are certain factors that you will have the nature of your ligands. What are all the nature of the ligands? So it's very important to know the concept of your ligands. When we say nature of ligands, we have to understand that their nature is basically going to be dependent, or it is determined by the property that is called as denticity. That is called as your denticity. And they will be helpful in determining the total number of donor atoms in a molecule. Based on, it will help you to determine the total number of donor atoms in a molecule. And on the basis of the property, denticity, ligands are monodentate, or it can be unidentate. That means it will have only one donor atom. It will have one donor atom. Bidentate, it will have two donor atom. Polydentate, multiple. So we are having three or more, we call it as your polydentate. Then they can be, we are having an example of hexadentate, that is your ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. In short, you would have come across about EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. And when we talk about the concept that is called as chelate, ligands has two or more donor atom, and they are arranged in ring-like structure. If they are arranged in ring-like structure, we call it as a chelate. And the stabilization of coordination compound due to chelation, it is called as chelate effect. It is called as chelate effect. And the most important is your, what are all the different types, or we are saying it as your symmetrical and unsymmetrical ligands. If suppose I say that ligands are attached to the central atom are being of the same type, the atoms, or sorry, the ligands being attached to the central atom are of same type. For example, I can say CH2, NH2, CH2, NH2. So in this case, we can say as your, it is in their central atom, the ligands is of same type, hence you can say it as a symmetrical. And if we are saying the ligands attached are of different type, then it will be considered to be unsymmetrical. And the most important part of this chapter is we should know how do we calculate the coordination number and the oxidation number. Two factors from coordination number, mostly the questions are being asked, either the name of the coordination compound, or in order to calculate the coordination number, the two most important. So coordination number, if we say, it is nothing but the number of ligands bonded with the central metal atom. It is the number of ligands being bonded with the central atom. And when we say oxidation number, it is the residual charge which is left on the atom when all the other atoms are being removed from it. Hence, it is very important factor that we know to calculate how the your coordination number and the oxidation number. And when we are talking about your coordination number, we should know, for example, and if we are talking about isomerism, they are undergoing different types of isomerism. That is your structural and stereo isomerism. What are all structural and stereo? If we talk about your structural isomerism, it becomes one more important factor that we are having different types of isomerism under structural. One is your ionization, hydrate, coordination, and linkage. Ionization, it's a well-known fact that they will differ in production of ions in aqueous solution. They will differ in production of your ions in aqueous solution. Hydrate, or they are also called as solvate. They are they will differ in number of molecules of your water of crystallization. There will be difference in the number of molecules of water of crystallization. Coordination, they will differ in coordination of your entities. In the same way, you are having linkage isomerism. Ambidendant ligands, in this they will differ in the point of attachment. And stereoisomerism, when we say, of course, it will undergo two isomerism, that is your geometrical and optical. Geometrical is because of the difference in geometrical arrangement of ligands around the central metal atom. And of course, you know it can be your cis or trans structure. Cis when the similar ligands are on the adjacent position, and trans when similar ligands are on the opposite positions. And another type is your geometrical isomerism, which we are saying it as that it can be of two types, your facial and meridional. And as of course your optical isomerism, if your chiral center is being present in them, or if they possess chiral center, they can rotate the plane of your polarized light. So we say that it is showing your optical isomerism. And what are all the bondings, or we can say that nomenclature, or all should know how to name the compounds. What are all the methods we use in order to name the coordination compounds? So do learn how we are going to name. And the next one, we have to talk about your organometallic compounds. There are different organometallic compounds. We say that if we are talking about organometallic compounds, these are those compounds in which your metals or metalloids or a non-metal is directly linked to carbon atom of a hydrocarbon. It is directly linked to carbon atom of a hydrocarbon atom. For example, we can say C2H5 2Zn, C2H5 2Zn. And there are two different types of organometallic compound, that is sigma and your pi. Sigma means these are all the compounds which is obtained by bonding of your non-metal with metalloid elements. And pi, these are compounds, they are obtained by forming mainly by transition elements. That is your normal sigma bond is formed through the pi electrons cloud of your organic molecule. For example, you can say razor salt. And yes, there are different application of your coordination compounds. When we say different application, where all the places we are using it? Of course, we are using in the estimation of hardness of water, of your calcium, magnesium ion, that is going to form complex with your EDTA. It is also used in the estimation and detection of your metal ions. It is being used in extractions of metal. We are using coordination compounds in the medicines like your cisplatin for the purpose of treatment of cancer. It is being used in animal and in plant world, like your hemoglobin is basically a complex of your iron. Chlorophyll is a complex of magnesium, and many more. So there are different applications of your coordination compounds. And based on our analysis of the concept, let us try taking a test from coordination compounds. So once again, we have to go to chemistry and select a test from coordination compounds. This is also a very simple chapter. As I told you, we need to focus on the naming of the compounds and how do we calculate the coordination number. So the first question is carnallite is an example of. Carnallite is an example of which one? So when we say carnallite, it is nothing but a double salt. It is a hydrated potassium manganese chloride. Hydrated potassium manganese chloride with the formula of KMgCl3.6H2O. It is a hydrated potassium magnesium chloride and it is a double salt. So option D should be correct. Let us save that and go to next. The next question says ligand in a metal carbonyl complex is actually your CO, because metal carbonyls are coordination complex of transition metals with carbon monoxide as their ligands. Hence, let us say B is the answer. The charge on cobalt in, we have to calculate the charge on cobalt. So how do we calculate the charge? So simple, we have given COCN6. For example, let us take COCN6 and 3 minus. So when we take this 3 minus, the total charge of the molecule, it is 3. Hence we can consider, they have asked us to calculate your cobalt. Let us consider that to be your X. And cyanide, Cn minus. So charge of your Cn is -1. But since you are having 6 here, that means you will have -1 into 6. And the total charge is equal to your -3. So X minus 6 is equal to -3. X is equal to plus. So this is the way you will calculate if they are asking for a specific one. So here the charge of your cobalt in this compound, it should be +3. Let us see. Option B is correct. Let us save that and go to next. The donor atom in ethylene diamine, ETDA, as we discussed. Ethylene, the donor atom in your ethylene diamine is your N and N, because you will have two donor atoms in ethyne, that is your 2N atom, and each of which will be donating one lone pair of electrons. Hence ethylene diamine N and N is the donor atom. Let us save that and go to next. The oxidation state of iron, in the oxidation state of iron we have to calculate. FeCN6 3 minus. It is FeCN6 3 minus. We need to calculate the oxidation state of iron. So the total charge, once again it is -3, and let us keep X for your iron. X plus your Cn minus, once again 6 into -1, that will become is equal to your -3. So X is equal to -6. So it becomes +6 minus 3. X is equal to 3. So option C. Save that and go to next. The primary valency of Fe in the given complex. The primary valency of your Fe. Primary valency is always equal to the oxidation state. remember, primary valency is always equal to the oxidation state. Hence, we have to calculate the oxidation state of Fe in the given compound. So, if we calculate here as the given is complexes your F4, Fe, Cn, 6, hence K4 oxidation, you know it is your 1 for your potassium. So plus 1, and Fe it is unknown because we have to calculate, and Cn minus 1, so 6 into your minus 1. Since you do not have any charge, the total value will be equal to 0. So 4 plus x minus 6 is equal to 0. X you will get it to be equal to plus 2. So answer A should be the correct option. So let us save that and go to next. The hybridization of iron in K4FeCN6. We have to calculate the hybridization. So when we are talking about hybridization of iron, they are asking. Iron atomic number what it is? 26. So you will have 6 electrons are going to be in 3d orbital and 2 electrons are there in 4s orbital. And just now we have calculated that iron has an oxidation state of plus 2. Hence, from that well-known fact, you can say that the hybridization should be D2sp3. Let us save that and go to next. The formula of nitrosyl group. We have to say the formula. Nitrosyl group or nitroso will always refer to a functional group in organic compound which will have NO group attached to the organic. So we can say nitroso group means, or nitrosyl group is nothing but your NO. Option A. Let us save that and go to next. Hydrazinium ion. Which one we call it as hydrazinium ion? Hydrazinium ion, or it is a cation with the formula of your N2H5 plus. N2H5 plus. So N2H5 in the option C we are having as your N2H5 plus. So we are having, save that and go to next. IUPAC name, as I told you, naming is important. So IUPAC name of this compound is nothing but potassium hexacyanoferrate. Potassium hexacyanoferrate. And iron, we have calculated that it is in the K3. Hence, we have to calculate the oxidation state of iron, and then we have to say whether the oxidation state is plus 2 or plus 3. But when you calculate the oxidation state here for your Fe, you will find that it is in plus 3 state, and hence you say as your potassium hexacyanoferrate 3. Hence option D is right. Let us save that and go to next. Which of the following is an ambidentant ligand? Which of the following is an ambidentant ligand? So a ligand is nothing but the molecule that is going to bind to a central metal atom to form a complex. And electrically charged or monodentate ligand is your halides. You can say F minus, Cl minus, Br minus, and Cn minus is actually an ambidentant ligand. So let us save that and go to next. The ionization isomerism is possible in which of the given option? So of course it will be possible with your CONH3Cl option C. Let us save that and go to next. In metallurgy, the metal used to displace silver from its cyano complex, the metal which is used to displace silver from its cyano is complex is your zinc. If you learn the metallurgy, it will be very simple to answer, and you can say that the option will be zinc. So option A. Let us save that and go to next. The metal present in chlorophyll, it is a well-known fact that it will be magnesium, because chlorophyll will contain magnesium ion, and that is having a ring-like structure, which you will say it as your chlorine, or it is heterocyclic compound. Hence option B. Let us save that and go to next. Which of the following exhibits purple color in the solution? Which of the following will exhibit? Transition metals are colored because they will be, or they will on radiation in the visible spectrum is of the right frequency to propose their electronic transition. And here titanium ions are purple because the green light wavelength 5000 or 500 nanometer will be approximately observed. So option titanium, that is titanium H2O, this option you will say it to be the right one. They will exhibit purple color in the solution. So we have completed all the 15 tests. Let us save that and click end test. So here all the questions are correct, and as I told you, if it is wrong, the color will be red in color, and if it is incorrect or unattempted, it will be orange in color. And if you click on any question, it will give you the right answer with a proper explanation. That's all we have for today. If you have any question, do reach out to us with the help of your ask feature, which is available here, or you can post your questions through Telegram chat application. And in case if you need any additional help, you can reach out to Play 6 Management for one-to-one tutoring. Thank you, students, for